Coverage of NCBA's CattleCon 2024 is brought to you by Alta. Working together for a planet of plenty. Find out more by going to altec.com. Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. We're at CattleCon 2024 in Orlando, Florida. Joined right now by Kee Jim of Okotoks, Alberta, also of TELUS Agriculture. Kee, it is great to chat with you.
Glad to be here, Shaun.
Now, Kee, you're going to be presented actually this evening, I believe, being inducted into the U.S. Cattle Feeders Hall of Fame. And this is... I think an accomplishment that is absolutely amazing for somebody from Canada to be in such a esteemed company. There's a lot of, obviously a lot of cattle being fed in the U.S. You must be incredibly honored and proud to receive the award tonight.
I certainly am, and I've been in the business for 40 years, and you don't get here all in one step.
Yeah. So give us some of your background. Some of the audience might not be totally familiar with some of what you have done in the cattle industry. So talk about, give us some of that background.
Okay, I'm originally from a ranch in the interior of British Columbia, and I went from there to veterinary college at the University of Saskatchewan. Graduated in 1983. And then moved to the Okotoks, Alberta area to be a consultant and as a veterinary consultant in the emerging feedlot industry, that really started, say, 50 years ago. Yeah. So I was really fortunate to be part of the origin of the cattle feeding business in Western Canada. And I got involved, obviously, as a consultant, but very quickly started to be involved in cattle ownership and the business of feeding cattle. So it's kind of two parallel streams, the story of Feedlot Health Management Services and at the same time as, established Kee Jim Farms. Yeah. And over a very long period of time, four decades, the consulting company grew from a single-person operation, myself, and it grew to 50-plus consultants, veterinarians, DVMs, 130 employees total, and it provides services globally for beef cattle feedlots in North America, China, Russia, Kazakhstan, South Africa, virtually everywhere on the planet where cattle are fed. And at the same time, again, very, very fortunate in the first, 20 years that we were involved in Western Canada. It was extremely the most profitable time ever for feeding cattle. And it became a part of that and grew my cattle feeding business. And because of the consulting, I became aware of what was happening here in the U.S. and got involved in several feedlot operations in the U.S. on the ownership side in Texas and Colorado and New Mexico, Nebraska. Yeah. So just a steady growth over the years.
Well, you're understating that. So congratulations. There's a lot of veterinary service companies out there. What you built with Feedlot Health Management, incredible. You built it for scale. Talk about just the mentality around that, because that in itself is an incredible entrepreneurial story.
Yeah, I believe that the difference is that I was deeply rooted in science, right? So very early on I could see that if you could build a system where you had data collection, data analytics and research capabilities, right, you should be able to create a better mousetrap that clearly separated out from the rest of the market. So rather than be intuitive based or a guru based system, right? It was a database system that you could grow and then you could leverage across a lot of cattle with not very many people. Yeah. Right, so that was the whole model to have a very, very distinct science-based approach that was factual and based on the data. And then that would be transportable to other geographies, the same approach, just have to, in the same methodology, right, that you could just, organically grow and scale, and it would be applicable. It wouldn't matter where you went in the world, right, that the model would still be intact and solid.
from a cattle feeding perspective, I've always thought of your model as unique or different. In that really expansive time in the cattle sector, like you mentioned, the '90s, where anybody, you just had to buy an animal and throw some barley in it, and anybody could make money. It was an incredible time. Everybody was investing in bricks and mortar, and you weren't necessarily like some of the other that were out there. Talk about that in terms of that thought from a business perspective.
Yeah. From the Kee Jim Farms perspective, that was a competitive advantage for 25 years because as you pointed out clearly, the return in the cattle was far greater than the return to the bricks and mortar of the feedlot, right? And so when that occurred, right, I could grow much more rapidly by focusing just on the cattle, just owning the cattle, renting the feedlot, and essentially renting the farming, right, until the model had to be adjusted. Starting about 15 years ago, I started to buy infrastructure as well because you needed to do both, right? The returns to the cattle alone were not compelling enough. But for the first 25 years, there was a 20 to 30% return in the cattle. So why wouldn't you be focused on, doing that? And then, like any business, you have to pivot when the economics change. And it's a lot more difficult business now, right? So you've got to be doing everything right. Your farming right, your feedlot infrastructure, the cattle. It's the combination of all three of those things now. It's not just one thing that you can do.
Over your career, what would you consider to be one of the toughest business decisions you had to make?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the more difficult decisions was to get more focused on the U.S. market than in Canada because I would say right now roughly 80% of my cattle feeding activities is in the U.S. Right? So, for somebody from Western Canada, pivoting your model to another country, right, and be more focused there, it's not an easy decision, but my whole life I've followed the money, and it's just been a lot tougher in Western Canada to make the business work, so why not go where the returns are better?
Is that because of the fact you could feed corn? Is it takes you away from the risk of a thickening border? Is sort of the BSE being that stark reminder? Are those kind of the considerations for that?
Yeah, for sure. All of the above, right? In order to make cattle feeding work in Canada, we need to have a significant grain basis, right? Our cost of production are higher, our weather's worse, and a lot of times we sell fat cattle on a basis, right? So the only way you can win is if your cost of gain is lower. And for a variety of reasons, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had drought-type conditions or semi-drought, and we've been importing corn. Right? And I can tell you on a long-term basis, we won't import corn and win. Right? It's as simple as that.
Also, definitely a net feeder cattle importer as well.
Oh, exactly. Right. So we have a number of factors in Western Canada that's made things more difficult. Right. And then some of the other frustrations that we get into in Western Canada, we try to build biodigesters. Right. Which is what we're doing here in the U.S. as well. Way more complicated than Canada. Difficult to figure out how to get one permitted. Right? That's just, an example of what have made things more difficult.
Kee, you alluded to the fact that cattle feeding has really changed over your career. Where does cattle feeding go next? You don't need to give away all your secrets. I wouldn't expect that. But just from a general standpoint, what do you think is some of the next evolutions of the cattle feeding sector?
I think what you're going to see is feedlots of much larger size at this idea when we first started, we thought, a 5,000 head feedlot, that's big. And then a 10,000 head feedlot. When I started in 1983 and I went to work at Western Feedlots as a consultant, they just built a feedlot. It was 10,000 head, right? It was like, wow. Right. Well, I think the right scale now is really, we're building a feedlot in Nebraska, just started one. It's going to be 150,000 head. Right. I think clearly the future is very large sites to get the economies of scale. So I say much larger feedlots. And I think that rather than build feedlots where you happen to live, right? People are going to have to look around and say, really, where is the best location for feedlots, all things considered? Right, and I think you'll see that a lot of the cattle feeding, will gravitate to the areas that truly are in the aggregate the best spots. Right, not just because I woke up and say I live here, I'm going to build a feedlot here. And then technologies, what we're going to see, and we've already seen it, the roller compacted concrete. That's one of the biggest technological changes in that I've seen, right? So there'll be infrastructure type, things that are required, and then I also think that technology, there will be things that allow us to, have feed trucks that don't have drivers. There's going to be ways to do pen checking with sensors and other devices, right? So I see a sea change of technology. And I think the feedlots 10 to 15 years from now are going to be a lot different than they are today.
Yeah, I was just trying to do the math on how many pen checkers you would need for a 150,000 head yard. Significant, and also, like, how many silage pits would there be on a yard like that? Multi-location?
No, they'll be aggregated in one spot, but we'll have about 6. Right, very large pits again. Roller compacted concrete on the floor and that, that sort of thing. So, there's a lot of capex going to be associated with these new sites, but they're going to be a lot more efficient.
Well, Kee, I look forward to visiting and seeing that with my own eyes. And once again, honestly, congratulations on being inducted into the Cattle Feeders Hall of Fame. That is an incredible honor and award for you. So it's well deserved. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.